Good morning in America, good afternoon in Europe, and good night in the Asia markets. Welcome, this is Alex Luna and Juan Carlos, and we're very happy to have you here to begin this second day of the Legal Summit. And we also have another full day of very interesting topics and amazing speakers. So let's continue. Juan, please, if you want to continue with this.
Sure, welcome and happy to have you. Thanks for joining. As we did yesterday, we shared this slide. Just an important mention that the entire legal ecosystem is in a need to modify the strategies to incorporate AI in the day-to-day. If we do it in law firms, companies, courts, and academia, in return, AI will act as an invisible helping hand, allowing all of these parties in the legal ecosystem to not only to remain relevant, but to excel. And what we mentioned, which is important, is the focus on innovation and technology. And those words come together. If we're able to do that, one of the things that we'll achieve is the sense that the legal sector or the legal industry can be entrepreneurial.
And as we mentioned yesterday, the challenges upcoming are stressful lives, too much information, and too much technology. And the idea of this summit is to share with you and your colleagues other options, other solutions, other technologies, so you can have an idea of what's going on out there in the market and just take the right measures. This is a classical. And as we mentioned yesterday, no sector is safe from digital disruption, and definitely not even the legal sector. So we are here because we want to remain relevant in a digital economy as a law industry. And we want to thank our sponsors, iManage, Logistic, Net Documents, Hogan Lovells, Esija, Geniusoft, Deloitte Legal, Thomson Reuters, Lexsoft Systems. Thanks to their generous support, we're able to make these legal summits every year. And a word of wisdom on artificial intelligence from this guy. We are at the beginning of a golden age of AI. Recent advancements have already led to invention that previously lived in the realm of science fiction, and we have only scratched the surface of what's possible. So, as we know, this is new. Artificial intelligence is neither good nor bad. It's a neutral reflection of those who imprint them. And we are now, Juan, if you want to take on from here.
We always try, as we begin this presentation, just take a few minutes to show these slides and always include the legal tech fact. And this comes to show the impressive growth of patent application on the artificial intelligence field. Just gives you a flavor of how big this industry is, how dynamic it's moving, and how important for the entire activity of all the industries, and certainly for the legal industry more precisely. And this is also typical for lawyers, and the mentality that we have is that we don't want to get into too complicated or too complex systems and solutions. That's why today presentation is very important by an expert who has made simplicity part of the equation, and I think it happens to all of us that we want to find the facts and get them as simple as possible. And again, we have amazing speakers. Yesterday we had a great session. Today is the second session, and we start with a true champion on innovation and artificial intelligence that will comment in a second. And Alex, if you can please introduce our friend Andrew Klein.
Yes, of course. Andrew Klein is the founder and CEO of Rain in Court, a groundbreaking technology platform company that makes cloud-based software applications accessible to the legal industry. Andy is a Harvard Law School graduate and former Kravet, Swain and Moore associate. And after leaving the practice of law, he became an entrepreneur and founded several successful companies like Wit Capital, Spotzer Media, and hedge fund investor Skybridge Capital, and sustainable infrastructure investor Ultra Capital. Andy even started a beer company called Spring Street Brewing Company and made America's first Belgium-style beer. Unfortunately, we just found out that he's no longer there. That's a sad notice that we just found out. He's now living in Amsterdam. That's where he's broadcasting today from with his Dutch wife and family, and helps law firms and in-house legal departments accelerate the adoption of new cloud technologies and use the power of technology in the delivery of legal services. And without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen so we can have Andrew here with us online.
Welcome, Andy.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Can you all see my screen, just to be clear?
We're seeing your face now, and people are seeing the three of us now. And whenever you're ready, if you want to share your screen, that will be the time.
I just thought I did. Give me, let's try that one more time.
There we go.
How's that?
That's better.
Okay. And if you just go to full screen or presentation mode, we will be seeing it complete.
And by the way, when we get this in place, please, for all the attendants, first of all, thanks for joining us. And second, feel free to ask any questions at the stage Q&A symbol. You can upload the questions, and what I'll be doing after Andy finishes his presentation, we'll just go directly to questions the last minutes of the hour.
The floor is yours, Andy. Thank you.
Great. Well,
thank
you. Thank you very much. I am very, very happy to be here and look forward to sharing Reigning Court's story with you. We are not ourselves what you would consider today an AI company, but the origins of Reigning Court very much lie in the advent of the new generation of artificial intelligence. As Alex was kind enough to recite, I've done a number of different things in my career over 3 decades now. But I started at Cravath as a lawyer in the transaction practice, left in 1992, so quite a long time ago, and started as an entrepreneur. And it's a long story and too many twists and turns to consume this precious time with. But suffice it to say that about 3.5 years ago, I wound up with nothing that I had to do every day. And I started thinking about a new venture for myself. And I started reading about artificial intelligence and watching YouTube videos and talking to engineers and venture capitalists and other people I respected. And some of those folks who knew a little bit about where I had worked in my earlier years kept suggesting to me that I should look at the legal industry as a ripe area for innovation driven by AI. And that seemed like a pretty good idea. I didn't know much about healthcare or autonomous driving vehicles, and I was really looking for something not only that was promising and potentially impactful, but that would be relevant or appropriate for me to try to sink my teeth into as an entrepreneur. I had some friends from my law school days, from my days at Cravath, and just from life in general that wound up staying after decades at the major law firms, particularly in the US and the UK. And I started over the course of a summer about 4 years ago, socializing with some of my old friends about the ideas I had for the application of AI to their business. And a couple of things struck me right away. They were excited and terrified in pretty much equal measure about the promise of AI. But even more importantly, they were paralyzed as members of large law firms with a very, very high degree of sensitivity around data protection and security, they were paralyzed at the pace of innovation happening in AI that is inherently based on cloud computing. That is to say, all of the exciting technologies are designed to run with the benefits of the cloud. The elasticity of compute and the ease of scaling up and scaling down was critical to the next generation of technologies. And as many of you know, most very large law firms, and equally most of their very large clients, particularly the banks and the financial institutions, still run most of their compute in traditional data centers because they believe they need or are required to need total control over their data. I started thinking less about trying to create a new AI application and began trying to figure out how potentially I could work with the large firms and their large clients at constructing an approach to modern cloud computing that would leave the firms and their bank and other important clients still in control of their data. And Reigning Court is essentially an effort to realize that vision. Reigning Court is a platform. You can think of it in many respects as an app store for legal technology, but it's fundamentally a two-sided marketplace platform that embodies standards and some new approaches to computing paradigms that enable the buyers of software to bring cloud software to run in private cloud infrastructure that remains completely under the control of the buyer of the software, as opposed to the more well understood, more common approach to cloud computing, which is software as a service, where each vendor provides in a vertically integrated stack their application and the computing power, the infrastructure to run the application. That seemed like a pretty good idea to me, and in starting to try to build a business around that idea, I came up with the tactical approach to firstly focus on the buyers of legal technology, and particularly a large group of the most influential buyers by their size and the dollars that they spend. And I was able to go out and in a couple of quarters' time, I built what we call here at Reigning Court a consortium, which today has 20 of the largest global law firms as members and participants. You can see on the screen here the names of the firms, but it's an incredible representation of the large law firm community. And this group has met with Reigning Court every quarter for nearly 3 years now, and have become not only our biggest influencers, but our current customers. And with the help of these law firms, we've been able to now go out and not only define standards, build a platform, but convince now over 130 independent third-party vendors of software to come on the platform and begin to collaborate with us, and through us with the law firms. In the last couple of months, we've also managed to pull together a second collaborative body that will be launching its cooperation shortly, that will comprise over 20 in-house legal departments that also see tremendous opportunity in reversing the model of cloud computing in the way I just described, and enabling the buyer to bring the cloud software down to work where the data already sits. That group includes 6 of the largest banks in the world, and a really impressive collection of general corporate legal departments. And we're really excited to broaden our understanding of what is important and required for an in-house legal department. But that support from the industry behind a set of standards that can be understood and acted on by vendors is at the core of what Reigning Court is all about. The context for reigning court, of course, is what you're all hearing about throughout this conference and generally every day in the trade press and in your practices. It's a virtual onslaught of new technologies across every practice area, every type of law firm, and certainly across the whole range of capabilities powered by AI. We're seeing innovation from new companies, venture-backed companies, large mature companies that are adding features to old products or building new products. And it's just overwhelming the speed at which new technologies are being imagined, built, and offered into the marketplace. Lots of pressure mounting because the capacity of current organizations to process all of that, make the right choices, run the right tests, and adopt the right software is overwhelming, but the pressure is real. Clients understand that the legal industry is behind other industries in just adopting automation and new technology, and are looking for collaborations with their service providers to improve quality, drive efficiency, and deliver transparency to a set of services that haven't been terribly transparent in the past. So huge pressure. The current paradigm within most large legal organizations for finding, testing, buying, safely deploying, and managing new technologies is just not adequate. It takes too much time, it costs too much money and resources, and it requires too much compliance and consent work to be done, including, in many cases, getting consent for new cloud applications from dozens or even hundreds of individual clients who in their engagement letters mandate a say in where their data resides. And so the barriers to effective tech adoption are significant. When you unpack that a little bit, it becomes quite interesting. You see that the challenges actually fall across three main buckets and have a lot of complexity each individually. And when you put it all together, you have lots of cause for concluding that the current methods are just not adequate to what's happening now in the industry. We like to put them in three big buckets. The challenges: security, speed, and strategy. Security is probably the most important one, but it's by no means the only important impediment today. To begin with, you have the status quo where large organizations are actually very good at maintaining security and control over their risks by running data centers. And yet, a lot of the software that they see coming to market and that they know they will ultimately need and want isn't even making itself available to be deployed in a traditional manual way into their data centers. So they're simply tools that modern law firms know they need that today they can't adopt without giving up control over their data, and they're not easily able to do that or interested in doing that. The new SaaS solutions, as I've said, require trust, each one of new environments, new people, new policies, new contracts, and security regimes that require an enormous amount of time to understand, to evaluate, and then to stay vigilant and in control of. And when you multiply that by the dozens to hundreds to one day many hundreds of applications that firms believe they will run, it's overwhelming to imagine a world in which the old data centers shut down and all the computing moves to cloud if your vision of cloud is limited to software as a service and you believe that for every application you're going to need to get comfortable and trust another set of policies, people, and environments. So very challenging. Speed is challenging. It just takes too long to do all the research to discover what's available in a category of the market, and to have the expertise in-house to be able to do that efficiently is very, very challenging. Negotiating contracts is still very bespoke, lengthy, and tedious for both the buyers and the sellers of technology. Every vendor has his own contract. Every law firm has its own checklist of things it requires in a contract. And the lawyers on both sides spend months typically sending red lines back and forth, trying to flush out the same issues over and over again from contract to contract. Testing requires too much effort. Most firms want to pilot software before they will start paying for it. Vendors are willing to pilot, but setting up environments that are safe and secure, negotiating contracts, and doing all that research before you can even get your hands on the software is illogical when there may be better ways to enable instant testing of software. But often we hear firms went through months, even quarters of preparation to research, contract, and set up pilots for software, and only to put the software in front of users. And in 2 hours, the users say, no, this is completely too difficult. This is not at all what we need, or we love it, and let's start using it. We see huge expenditures of time and money in testing. And then thirdly, strategy. Legal technology is generally very limited in interoperability. That is to say, one system talking to another, one software solution talking to another, takes a tremendous amount of time by engineers on both the buyer and the seller side to figure out what are the data models, what are the interoperability rules, what services are available, and how can software applications speak to each other safely and securely. So interoperability is a huge burden today. Subscription models in the legal industry are old-fashioned, mostly enterprise software licenses where you have to guess at the beginning of a period how much of the software you need, sign up to buy it, own it, put it on the shelf, and then let your users do their work. And when you find out what is actually necessary, you hope that you bought the right software at the right time for the right people. And at the end of the year, you try to do some kind of reckoning and figure out where to adjust licenses. Do I need more? Do I need less? Did that not get used? And are there other tools that we need? And it's a constant process of trying to figure out in advance what people need. We think, as you'll see, that there's a better way where you can enable purchasing of software at the moment of need, use it, meter and measure the usage, and pay for the consumption. Telemetry is very limited. So who's actually using software? How much does it actually cost us, not only in the licenses, but in the compute or the storage that we're consuming in using the software? So to get a system up and running and then have it be interoperable and then having it feed the right data to you and help you analyze that data is almost non-existent for most software applications. And certainly there's no standard way that that's done in the industry, which is causing a tremendous amount of time and money to be spent making ecosystems speak and produce telemetry in a sensible way. Anyway, these are the major areas of pain that we have at Reigning Court focused on. And of course, we believe that there is a powerful solution, a single platform akin again to an app store for legal technology that makes it easy to source and test, that makes it easy to securely adopt, and makes it easy to strategically manage third-party software. And that's basically what Reigning Court, with the help of this great group of law firms and now legal departments, has been working to build. There are many components to the actual platform, and I'm going to take you through that in a moment, but at a very, very high level, there are three main activities. There's what we call a solution store, where we present all the available solutions in the market and a set of curated content, research and analysis, test results, and information that we develop and share, essentially developed in the same image that we have come to learn each large law firm does in their own work as they move towards getting comfortable with a product, a vendor, and a commercial relationship with a vendor. We do that work in advance. We publish that content and make it available to people that use our platform. It doesn't eliminate the need for the firms to make their own decisions or even do their own research, but we like to think we're at the point now where we get the law firm to sort of the 50-yard line at least instantly, and then they can figure out what they want to do further. That includes a facility to do what we call test drives. One click, pre-configured application opens and can be experienced from a look and feel and functionality perspective right out of the box without even needing to call the IT department to get started. Securely adopt. This is the heart of the Reigning Court platform, and I'll get into this in a little bit more detail in a moment, but we enable vendors of legal tech to put in the App Store containerized versions of their software in a little box with the runtime dependencies that enable that software to become portable, that enable the buyer of the software to basically drag and drop that software through our platform into a private cloud under the control of the buyer. It can be in their data center, it can be in a virtual private cloud hosted by Microsoft or AWS or Google Cloud, or in another cloud vendor's environment. The magic of the underlying technology, which is open source, really built by Google, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail if time permits, simply makes the software, modern cloud software, portable in a way that was unimaginable 5 years ago. But today literally makes it possible to imagine running dozens to hundreds of software products in one safe, secure place in a cloud, but a cloud you control with no one, not Reigning Court, not the vendor of software, able to access your data. And then thirdly, strategically manage telemetry, subscription management, the plumbing of basically tracking where everything is, what's being used, and how much it costs, enables the firm then to begin to strategically understand the actual total cost of ownership for their IT investments, and to be able to actually manage in a very, very powerful way where they spend money and where they dedicate resources. That's the Reigning Court platform in a nutshell. We have two subscription models. We have our core model, which is what the largest law firms all tend to prefer, which is a self-managed model. We provide the Reigning Court platform. The law firm brings its own cloud infrastructure and manages the application and all the activities that happen in the platform in their own private cloud, completely in control of their data. We've also launched in just the last month a second model, which we call a full service model, which basically takes exactly that same platform with all of the benefits and functionality, but layers on top of it a hosted for the client model where we can bring up a private cloud under your direction, but with a little bit of help from a service desk and a team of administration professionals here, that's designed to make it even easier for a law firm to get up and running and get access to the sourcing and testing environment and begin to do pilots and deploy applications. The trade-off there is considerable. You have to establish trust in Reigning Court, but once you trust us and you trust your private cloud provider, then you have one stable, secure environment, and you can bring 1 or 10 or 50 or 200 applications to work in that same environment without having to revisit perimeter security, network access, and all of the compliance issues that arise from disparate, unrelated third-party SaaS environments. As I said, we've come a long way. We're still in the early days. With the help of the law firm consortium, we have now 138 third-party products in the store, about 50 more that are in process. There are 18 products that have gone all the way through final deployment and testing that are what we call the deployable products. There are about 24 more products that are working through that onboarding testing process so that they can be fully deployable through the platform in the way I just described. The components are as follows. The private cloud and container orchestration capability, that's the meatiest part of it. For those who want to understand the enabling technologies, I refer you to Google search or come to the Reigning Court website and read up on cloud native computing. That's what the whole movement is called. Docker and Kubernetes are the two most important brand names, if you will. Docker is literally the box, the container that software developers put their software script in. Kubernetes is what what the industry calls a container orchestration solution. That basically is really the genius part, built by Google, gifted to the open source community about 5 years ago, and branded as Kubernetes. It basically takes the boxes and through complete automation, talk about artificial intelligence, Kubernetes basically takes over the scaling up and the deploying and scaling back of software when it's exposed to available clusters of cloud infrastructure. The simple way to understand Docker and Kubernetes is by analogy to the shipping industry. In fact, you see Docker uses the logo and the terminology from shipping containers. There are even great books written about how the discovery and innovation around containers transformed the whole world's economy and basically made shipping far more effective and efficient. Before shipping was containerized 50, 75 years ago, people that were shipping freight sent it to a port in any size container that fit the cargo. Boxes, safes, suitcases, all different shapes, sizes, weights, and sensitivities. And at the pier, laborers without computers had to figure out how to load the ship. And it took an enormous amount of time, physical labor, and was done tremendously inefficiently because people loaded cargo and then unloaded it. And then they had to balance the weight on the ship and make sure that it was seaworthy. Then they tried to make it efficient at sea. And the old way of loading freight on ships was an incredibly high percentage of the cost of shipping. They invented the notion of standardizing the box, the container. Multi-mode transport, trains, trucks now could deliver containers to the pier. And they then started to build automation that could take the boxes with a few data inputs about size and weight. They could basically figure out where to put each box, automate the loading of the cargo and the unloading of the cargo, and eliminate a huge amount of the cost through standardization. Moreover, the freight could be packed at the factory and sent in a standard container that just made it so much easier to get it where it had to go and then onto the ship without packing and unpacking. In any event, I think you get the idea. Docker is the container. It's meant to completely standardize what the box looks like into which software developers can put their assets. Kubernetes is the equivalent to the orchestration software that takes all those boxes and figures out how to run them on the infrastructure that's available. And Docker and Kubernetes has now been widely accepted by every major technology company, by all of the cloud vendors, and by all the largest software developers in the world as the new thing, the new way to build software, the new way to deploy software. And at the core, of course, it's about deploying it to the cloud. And so most of the deployments in the early years of Docker and Kubernetes were into big cloud-based computing environments where the company built their own software, Google, for example, and then ran Kubernetes and Docker to optimize the use of their own cloud software. A byproduct of that, though, is now that software can become portable, not only for the people running large cloud-based software organizations, but for the buyers of software. And that's really where Raining Court begins. We're taking that underlying technology and making it possible for the buyer to buy cloud software and run it in their own private cloud. The CEO of Google, in a keynote address last year, said Docker and Kubernetes are the infrastructure for the next 50 years. This is a major trend in how computing is designed and executed. And I think if you haven't heard of Docker and Kubernetes yet, keep in mind this moment, you're going to start reading more about it, hearing more about it. And I think you're going to come to see that it is a vital piece of what is going to open up greater opportunities to innovate and go faster without sacrificing security or stability in the future. Anyway, that's the container and container orchestration. The solution store at Raining Court's a bit more easy to understand. It looks like an app store. It's got research and content about the vendor, security standards, their commercial terms. It's got information about how hard is it to deploy, configure, support, and train. It has estimates of the total cost of ownership. How much does the cloud expense cost? What are the contract terms? What kind of service plans does a vendor offer? All designed, as I said, to just help you move faster to understanding what are the choices in a category, what are the strengths or weaknesses of different products in that category. It includes two very important capabilities for testing. One, as I said, a test drive, one click, and you can just start using a test version of the software provided already with documents and user profiles and data. So you don't even need to upload any data. You're just sort of doing a non-production level test of the experience of the software. And then secondly, when you want to go further, the ability to buy a license to an actual pilot in one click, pursuant to standardized model contract terms that, again, with pre-checked, pre-vetted security, with the ability to run the software in a private cloud and with standardized contract terms, you can literally set up a pilot and start executing it in one click. That's the solution store. Subscription management, similar to the way you can buy a one-click POC contract, at the core of the platform, we've built subscription management plumbing and a contracting regime that's based on model contracts with the potential for the buyer or the seller to negotiate exceptions to the model contract by a schedule, so that you don't need to redline and distribute 50-page license agreements to argue about 3 provisions. You can literally accept the model contract as the foundation of the contract and then talk about the exceptions that the law firm or the vendor require and see if you can reach a deal. All of that can be done through the platform. It can also be done off the platform, and the buyers can negotiate and bring licenses and manage the subscriptions. They register the subscriptions on the platform. But subscription management and contracting, a great opportunity to take costs out. Again, we didn't make that up. We took a model for contracting that's been in use for decades in the derivatives industry. For those of you who know the derivatives world, the form contract is the model contract for the global derivatives markets, and yet counterparties negotiate deals every day, every hour that reference the model contract, but on a schedule, a page, 2 page, 10 pages, they document the meeting of the minds on exceptions. And so we have a contracting regime built into the platform that takes time and cost out of the process of reaching agreement on the terms. Fourthly, telemetry. In a similar way to the way we've standardized the deliverable from a law firm so that the software works with Docker and Kubernetes in the private cloud, we've built automation that gathers telemetry, cost and usage data from each application in a consistent way, puts that data in a data lake, and then gives the law firm through the platform tools to visualize and analyze the data. And so by standardizing how applications feed data to Reigning Court, it means that each law firm doesn't need to call each vendor and ask, tell us about your data, tell us about your data models, what kind of API calls do we need to make, how do we integrate your data flow with our data analysis and collection regime. We've just standardized that so it saves the buyer and the seller time. Everything that comes on the platform just works with cost and usage data being collected. The final pillar of our platform is what we call a data hub. This is not live yet. The other 4 elements that I just described to you are part of what we have accomplished so far. The data hub is still a work in progress. The idea behind the data hub is to go even further with telemetry and enable a vendor to build an integration to a central hub that on the other side of the market is connected to the primary sources of truth that lie in the main systems of the law firm. Best example to understand that is client matter data. Every law firm has a practice management solution and they have client matter numbers and names. Sometimes they have multiple versions of that if they've done acquisitions and have older and different systems. It can be messy or very elegant in the status quo. But in any case, each time there's a new third-party application that comes on the scene, to figure out how to connect the capability to look up and validate client matter numbers and even enforce ethical wall restrictions on the users that are seeking to use those client matter numbers takes, again, a lot of point-to-point integration between the vendor and the law firm and the engineers on both sides. We're trying to eliminate that point-to-point integration by giving the vendors a plugin and a set of APIs that they can use to speak directly to the central registry, the data hub, and give the law firms a way to feed that data hub with the actual truth in real time that's required and eliminate all those point-to-point connections. That's the data hub. Why is this all so important? One, again, and most importantly, we are enabling you to bring modern cloud applications to the private cloud and run them safely, securely, and efficiently where your data is and needs to be, and where you probably, if you think about it long enough, will want it to remain. So bring the software to your data. Cloud computing plus control is how we would say it. Moment of need adoption is the other really big, extraordinary opportunity that we see. We want to enable the lawyers and their teams and their support staff to be able to find the right tool at the right time and buy it when they need it. The apps have to be pre-vetted. The vendor has to be pre-vetted. The contracting has to be made standardized. The security, of course, of running it in the private cloud for some will be critical. Others may be happy to run SaaS applications. We're not against SaaS applications. In fact, many of the applications are available in SaaS, some of them only in SaaS, many in SaaS or containers, but run with the degree of security and control that you need. But in any case, be able to make that judgment quickly when you need the software and then have it work off the shelf. Interoperability with your core infrastructure, interoperability at the data level, and interoperability with the other key anchor systems, your document management system, your practice management system, your workflow engines, the other main elements of your primary stack. The vision is to reduce from months to minutes the time it takes to buy, deploy, and start using new technology. I won't claim we're yet there. We are taking big chunks of that time and trying to re-engineer the processes and provide the content, the model documents, and the underlying technology to make that happen. But it's a tremendous opportunity that we invite the entire industry to lobby behind and join in the collaboration, because the more law firms and in-house departments that share that vision, the more vendors will be motivated to collaborate. Pay as you go. Pay as you go is almost as exciting as moment of need purchasing, but they're related. If you imagine, if you can buy the AI document review tool, or the AI redaction tool, or the AI translation tool, or the AI business analytics predictive tool when you need it, and you can safely and securely immediately deploy it, and you can meter and measure all of the usage, then you want to be able to negotiate to buy it and pay for it on terms that make sense for you. If it's something you use every day and every lawyer you know needs to use it, or you require them to use it, then you can negotiate an enterprise license agreement and have certain cost advantages, but not flexibility. On the other hand, if you don't know yet exactly what tools you're going to need for the matters you haven't even started working on yet, or what clients are going to expect you to adopt in service of their projects, being able to buy it when you need it, meter and measure the usage, and pay for the actual consumption by user, by matter, by page, by word, by letter, whatever the model of subscription that makes sense. That's a huge opportunity that we think is supported by the platform that we are building. And then lastly, cost attribution and analysis. I think you get it by now. I don't want to beat it to death. Put subscription management and telemetry together with a utility like the Data Hub, and you have a robust ability to begin to allocate costs and usage to clients and matters, or offices or teams, or other billing devices that matter. And as lawyers and in-house teams use more technology in doing their cases and matters, we believe it's going to be imperative that people have a way to allocate costs and analyze the true impact on their budgets, on their business models, on their profitability with real data. And Rain Court is trying to create the tools, the plumbing, to make that data available through standards and through wide adoption of those standards by both the buyers and the sellers of technology. I think I'll leave it at that and see whether people have questions, and if not, we will find another way to fill up the remaining minutes.
Thank you, Andy. Truly interesting conversation and presentation of what you describe as the App Store for legal tech, which is much needed in this current reality, where we see a lot of information, a lot of options, and a lot of pressure for lawyers that now are required to better understand what's out there in terms of legal tech and legal solutions, understand different type of concepts about the cloud and how it all connects into the day-to-day activity of the lawyer, either if it's a law firm environment or an in-house counsel environment. So a few questions, Andy. How do you see the acceleration of the adoption of these cloud-based solutions? Is this something that has dramatically changed over the past, let's say, 16, 18 months because of the pandemic situation? Is it following a normal trend of growth and development and awareness? How do you see it right now, and how is it impacting it's kind of a double question. How is it impacting not only the big enterprises, the big law firms or big corporation? How is it impacting, and how can it help the medium-sized law firm or the mid-sized in-house legal departments?
Juan, the pandemic has been a mixed period in terms of adoption and speed. I would say, on the one hand, it's never been more clear to the large firms that investments in technology and in cloud technology are fundamental. And so you've seen, I would say a withering almost overnight of some of the historical resistance. And for the most part, at the very large firms, I would say that the performance of the IT departments has been extraordinary and has been well received. And I think that's bolstered the appetite of firms to try to go faster. Most firms were able to go to remote work almost overnight or within days or weeks, where they had zero remote work. And I think the IT departments scored some real victories that have emboldened innovation and change and movement towards the cloud. So I think that's been a very positive thing for the industry, to basically be forced in such a radical event to modernize certain aspects of their business immediately. There have been casualties to that focus. Some application categories have been in enormous demand because those were the keys to getting remote working and remote transactions to work. Transaction management is a very good example of that. Previously, there were relatively few firms that had invested in platforms to basically get out of the conference room and away from the PDFs and copies of documents on a table to a platform for organizing transactions and closing. And they've been accelerated. And so there have been certain categories that have seen a big boost, I think, in their urgent adoption. And then there have probably been some setbacks for categories, maybe even some of the more important categories that are simply not as urgent. And I don't think that the appetite for those types of applications is diminished. It's just had to take a bit of a push towards the midterm, because there are only so many things that the firms could do. So I think that at the very large legal organization, IT and innovation are as prominent in their thinking and planning now as ever. And I think that will continue to accelerate. I don't think I'm in a great position to talk about the mid-size law firm. We hope to get to know more mid-size law firms as we bring the platform to maturity. We have very large law firms. We have some law firms that have signed up with us that have 500 to 1,000 lawyers, but I wouldn't call them small or mid-size. And equally on the in-house legal department side, we have started our journey with the very large, and to some extent, the problems of the very large organizations will flow down certainly to law firms that compete or provide services to the same types of clients that the very large firms do. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to have an equal ability to find the right tool at the right moment and keep secure and stable, expanding portfolios of applications. As you go down to more narrowly focused practices that do fewer things, have fewer types of tools required, and maybe have a lower sensitivity to control over security, then there may be other solutions that make more sense. At the very, very low end, for example, if you're a 3-person or 10-person law firm, Clio is doing a very good job bringing some basic practice management functionality and an ecosystem of tools that are really designed for small, less complex legal practices. There's a big gap between where Reigning Court has started and where Clio is a much more mature, scaled, successful company. They're enormously successful in that very small space. it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the middle. We certainly believe we're going to move pretty quickly now down towards a mid-tier, and I'm sure that Clio and other groups will aspire to move up, and probably both things will happen. And exactly where that middle is best served, I think we just don't know yet.
What would be, Andy, your piece of advice to? There are so many participants in this event that represent international organizations or regional organizations devoted to innovation and promoting innovation in law and promoting legal tech or helping legal tech startups all over the place, all over the world. And some of them are having instrumental in bringing this event to many, many countries. And they're listening now. How would you mention, or what would you say to those organizations and those people engaged, or maybe those lawyers thinking of doing a transition and changing to the legal tech environment? What would be your piece of advice in terms of how to maneuver, how to consider that option, or how to get immersed into that, looking at what you have done and all the options that exist to really gain some momentum, relevance, and visibility to the effort that they put together?
Well, we certainly look forward to meeting as many of the audience as we can. One of the things we invest a lot of time and money on our side is making ourselves available to get to know and to share our best understanding of the opportunities and challenges with vendors of legal tech, even at a very, very early stage. Obviously, segmenting the market and figuring out who your audience is, and then what requirements and obstacles there are for adoption by that audience is very important. The legal industry is very big, 1.2 trillion of services, by some estimates, 50, 60 billion spent on legal technology, but it's also segmented, as we just sort of discussed. And so what we can be most helpful at helping people investing in or supporting or building legal tech ventures, I think, is giving them a very clear understanding of the customer base that we interact with, the standards that they are trying to push, and sort of the requirements for being able to gain adoption from those attractive but very demanding customers. It's not for everyone, and there could be very big successful businesses built in many other aspects of legal tech. What Rain in Court can offer is partnership and assistance in figuring out whether the products and the vendor organization is got a high likelihood of hitting the needs of large legal organizations. It's not easy to generalize globally. There are a lot of legal tech companies coming out of many different parts of the world. Most of the legal tech that's adopted today at any kind of scale has tended to be in the English language, or at least mostly used in English language. That presents tremendous challenges in some other very important markets to simply have a route to getting to scale. We are working, for example, with the largest law firm in Japan, which is one of the 20 firms in our consortium, and we've had some good discussions with the second and third firms in Japan. And you need more than 2 firms to have a buyer's presence in a market that would lead a vendor to spend the money to prepare their AI or their automation to work in a language that's as hard as Japanese. A lot of German legal tech companies, we think that what we do and containers in the private cloud are particularly powerful in the German market, where the data protection laws are so severe that you can't even run most of the cloud applications that you might be able to run in the UK or the US in Germany, because you can't guarantee that the data won't leave Germany. So there are some really bright spots from the supply perspective. Spain and Latin America, we've had a chance to get to know 3 of the large Spanish firms. We haven't had the chance to actually work with them yet. But again, trying to understand how much legal tech will be available in Spanish in the important markets. It's not easy to figure that out. So in building the product for a non-English speaking market, I think you really have to have a pretty good understanding of who the buyer is and at least enough support from early adopters to get you to a maturity level where you actually have a product that you could then begin to think about globalizing. Obviously, the US has a fantastic advantage because there's so many damn lawyers and so much money spent on I think the US legal market is about half of the whole global spend, just because we got too many lawyers and you can't tie your shoe without lawyers. Japan, a country of, outside of China, I guess the second or third largest economy, they've got 30,000 lawyers in the whole country. So the markets are not all the same. The English-speaking markets have a huge advantage, particularly when you get into the complexities around natural language processing and AI and training models and all of that. I don't think there are a lot of great examples of AI in legal working across lots of different languages. I think there are some that do, but as it becomes more powerful, it also becomes challenging to know what works where.
Well, Andrew, we reached the top of the hour. Thank you very much for your insights. It's a really amazing story about, the App Store for legal tech. Brilliant idea. Lots of success and development of this. So we wish you the best. Let's keep in touch for further developments as you walk in this path. And thanks again for accepting the invitation to be.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you, Andy. And for the audience, we are gonna be going into literally a 3-minute break, a pit stop, and then we already have the next speakers here in the backstage. We're gonna put up their presentation, and we'll be back with you in 3 or 4 minutes max. So just get a quick coffee, and we'll see you in a couple minutes. Thank you.